YouTube. This is Jason from Primetime Aquatics bringing you another episode. Today we're going to be talking about the Bristlenose pleco. It's a fish that's found in South America around the Amazon basin as well as in parts of Panama. And we're going to talk about how we care for that fish, its general characteristics, and we'll also look at how we breed it and how we care for the fry. So stay tuned. So here we've got some Bristlenose fry. These are great fish. You can see here these are relatively small. In terms of their overall size, the mother of all these fry is actually right here. She's maybe 3.5 inches or so. I've seen them, at least in my fish room, get to about 5 inches. We've got a rather large female Bristlenose in with some, I would say, medium-sized Oscars. There have been reports they might get 6 inches. I've never seen them get that large, both males and females. In terms of their temperament, you can see here at least the juveniles get along relatively well with one another. If these were adults, this obviously wouldn't work. There'd be way too many fish in here. Males can be a little combative, so if you've got more than one male in a smaller tank, they need to have their own caves and their own places. Otherwise, they will chase each other around, most likely. Not all of them do, but again, there's a high likelihood that that may happen. But by and large, they don't pick on other fish. They don't bully other fish. They pretty much ignore other fish for the most part. My experience has been that other fish tend to ignore them. Now, if you've got aggressive fish, that may not be the case. They may decide that the pleco is going to be a meal or something like that. But their temperament, the Bristlenose temperament, is fantastic. In terms of tank mates, almost all of your standard tropical fish work pretty well. I've got them in tanks with smaller size South American cichlids, with Mbuna cichlids, peacock cichlids. I've got a large male Bristlenose in with some goldfish. So a wide variety of tank mates, as long as the tank mates aren't too aggressive and aren't going to try to eat them and bully them. These fish generally get along with just about everyone. In terms of food, right now you can see they're eating rapashi food, which is like a gel-based food, and obviously they love it. That food is called morning wood. It's by Rapashi. It's got a lot of wood content in the gel mix, which they really need as part of their digestive system. But they'll eat just about anything. They'll eat the biofilms, that kind of like that white fog that gets on the glass and on things. They eat that. They'll eat brown diatom algae. They eat green algae. Anything that falls to the ground. Flake food, sinking pellets. The one thing I will say is they like to eat a lot. That's a block of Rapashi that you see there. I have 8 super red Bristlenoses, which is what you're looking at. And I usually give them 2 of those blocks every night. And when I wake up in the morning, they're gone. And in the morning, they get something else, whether it's a big pinch of flake food or maybe another block of that. And they devour it. The fry tank, they usually get 3 fairly large blocks of Rapashi at night and then a couple more in the morning. And every time I walk in there, the stuff is gone. Now, I will switch things up. If you want the females to start breeding, sometimes some bloodworms, some frozen bloodworms work pretty well, kind of packs on a little bit of the weight. I found that tends to work out. They'll eat brine shrimp. So, a wide variety of foods. They're really not picky, but they do have a bigger appetite than I think people are really used to. So if you get this fish and you want him to clean up the glass and kind of clean up the tank and he does that, understand that from that point forward, you're going to have to put in some food, preferably right before you turn off the lights, because normally these guys are most active at night. Because there's really no other fish in these tanks, they tend to come out and they're active most of the day. But at night is really when they do most of their eating. Temperatures, I have Bristlenose in with goldfish, and that tank is sitting. It can get as low as 68 degrees for extended periods of time. I've had Bristlenose in with some cichlids that liked right around 80 degrees, 81 degrees, and they didn't seem to mind that as well. I'm not sure I'd go too much below 68 or too much above 80, 81 for an extended period of time, but they tend to like can withstand a wide range of temperatures and not really seem any worse for the wear. pH, I've kept them in pHs anywhere from around 6.2 up to about 8.2, and again, it doesn't seem to bother them either way. Right around neutral probably be ideal. Temperature right around 75 would probably be pretty good for them, but they have a wide range. In terms of water hardness, our tap water here in the Chicago area, at least mine, comes out right around 170 for total dissolved solids. But I've got tanks up over 500. I've got tanks, most of my tanks are right around the 300 mark, and they seem to be okay there. Tank size, now the tank that you're looking at is a 20 long with somewhere around 50 bristlenose, and as you can see, we cleaned this tank the day before we did the video, and I kind of left it this way so you could get an idea of just how much waste is produced in a short period of time. So obviously this tank is way overstocked, but for a fish, it eats a lot. It's going to create a decent amount of waste, but it is going to take care of that algae and stuff like that for you. So I would say in a 10 gallon, you're probably pushing it. This is a fish, again, that can get up to 4 or 5 inches. Probably not enough space. Certainly a 20 long would work. A regular standard 20 high is fine, and above you should have no problems there. In terms of the decor, hardscaping, the one thing that they do like is they have wood in their diet, and so they use that as part of their digestive system. So I try to keep wood in the tanks where I know I have bristlenose. It's not always possible. You can fix that with diet, like the Rapashi food here that's got a high cellulose or a high fiber content. That tends to help. But the one thing you want to be careful of, if you've got thin leaf plants like sword plants, they will most likely eat it. I had a couple other plants in this tank in particular and in the other 20 gallon with the fry, and that didn't work out just because the leaves were thinner, and they just ate them. Rasping on those thinner leaves can tend to break those leaves down. Breeding this is probably one of the easiest fish you'll ever breed if that's your intention. Typically, you buy, maybe if they're small like these super reds are, I bought 8 of them. They're still too young to tell the difference between males and females. At least I can't. None of them have the bristles yet because they're young. Eventually, you'd think just by probabilities, you'd wind up with at least 1 male and 1 female if you've got 8 super reds. The male will stake out one of the caves that you see. The female will come in. They'll do their thing and lay eggs, and the male will guard those eggs, and he'll fan them for a number of days, usually not more than, and it's partially temperature dependent, but usually the eggs are going to be fanned for a number of days, and then the fry are going to emerge, and the male's actually going to keep the fry in the cave until they're either big enough to sneak by him or he just lets them go. And even when he lets them go, they're still going to be very small. So if you've got other tank mates in there that are capable of fitting those fry in their mouth, chances are very good that they're going to become fry food or fish food. We had this particular pair breeding in a 37 gallon tank, and it was a community tank, and we saw tiny little fry a couple times, but they didn't make it typically because there were other fish in there. Not very big fish, just some tetras, and there was a night goby in there, and they consume those fry. So if you really want to breed these guys, it's best to do, like I've got these 20 gallon longs set up. There's no other type of fish in there. There's some shrimp, and that's about it. And we're getting pretty good results in terms of the number of fry that survive, just because there's nobody there to prey on them. So the typical batch size, at least for us, has been the females will lay eggs about maybe once a month or so, and so far the batches have ranged from around 20 to 30 fry for each batch, and the vast majority of them are surviving just well. The fry seem to be pretty hardy, even though they're extremely tiny, at least from early on. They eat pretty much what an adult would eat. They're going to be, you'll see them attached to the glass, and so they'll be taking care of the algae on the glass. They'll eat anything that falls to the any edible food that falls to the substrate. Again, you saw them eating all the Rapashi foods and things like that. So they're not terribly picky. The one misconception is that plecos eat fish waste, and that's just not true. They're going to want a food source, whether it's flake food or sinking pellets. Algae wafers are fine, although I find them to be particularly messy and they don't always contain the spirulina or the vegetable-based matter that they claim to, at least not in very high quantities. So that's something that you're going to want to keep in mind as well. Now, in terms of fry care, you want to be very careful if you're going to be using hang-on-the-back filters or canister filters, because the fry are so tiny
it may make it, you may wind up missing fry, because if they get sucked into those intakes, there's probably no recovering those. So if you have an intake sponge filter on your canister filters or your hang on the back filters, that would certainly be helpful. But they are wonderful fish. They're great fish because they do keep tanks really clean. If you see my fish room tour, the glass on a lot of my tanks are very clean, and that's really because of the bristlenose. We don't do a lot of algae scraping on the old side of the fish room. We do none, and there's just a couple tanks where the bristlenose are either too young or they just haven't done a sufficient job just yet. But as they get older, they do an excellent job of cleaning algae. So it's a great fish. If you've got a little bit of algae, obviously you want to dial in your lights and your nutrients. But if you want to take that next step and get a fish that's going to get rid of the brown algae and the green algae and those white biofilms, this is a wonderful fish to do that.
All right, everybody, so I thought I'd bring Luke along for this last part just because he and I were talking about this video. We were talking about the Bristlenose plecos, and I tend to get really excited about them. I know, the standard ones are just brown fish with little pointy things sticking out of their head, but I love them. I've got them in the vast majority of the tanks down here in the fish room, and they do a great job of cleaning algae, and so I tend to overlook some of the more challenging aspects or maybe even a few of the negatives. And he brought up some good points, and I thought maybe because he's the one that cleans these tanks, he's the one that maintains them for the most part, and if they look good, that's him. If they're not looking so great, it's probably because I did something to kind of mess them up a little bit, or maybe I want a little bit of growth or algae or things like that in the tank, but for the most part, he's the one that makes this stuff look great. So Luke, I thought it'd be a really cool idea if maybe you could tell everybody just some of the challenges that you have to think about if you want to keep bristlenose.
Okay, so one thing is that they produce a lot of waste and they have to eat a lot. Definitely do not keep them with large fish as, full-grown Oscars, full-grown Jack Dempseys, and larger South American cichlids. They have a chance of getting eaten. Also, they preferably need wood in their diet and to help digest. So if you don't have wood in the tank, it's okay because they just won't be as healthy as they would be if they had it.
Good. Well, thanks a lot, Luke. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, with the wood, it's highly recommended. I've had bristlenose in tanks without wood, but they really need that extra fiber to complete their dietary needs. And we really want to thank you guys for all the positive comments that have come out so far and the support. This is new for us. This is only our second video. We're trying to get the audio worked out. We're trying to get the camera work a little bit better for you guys. So be patient with us as we're learning, and we're trying to put some stuff out. We hope you think is useful. But if you like what you saw, please subscribe. Please like the videos. That helps us out. And stay tuned, because in the next week or so we'll put out another video. We'll try to put out another species profile, something that we're breeding. So thanks again, and we'll see you in the next one.